Welcome to the Elite Mind Athlete Mental Performance Podcast, hosted by Coach Jay Mercado, founder of Elite Mind Athlete. We're on a mission to transform your high school athlete into an unstoppable titan, far beyond the confines of the game, preparing them to dominate in any arena. Get ready to dive deep into the minds of elite coaches, former college athletes, and leading experts as we uncover the secrets to mental toughness, resilience, and peak performance. Today's podcast is sponsored by Elite Mind Athlete, the ultimate online mental performance program for high school athletes. Now let's get into the arena with Coach Jay.
What's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to Elite Mind Athlete Mental Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, and I'm on a mission of creating the next generation of winners, specifically high school athletes, unveiling the mental performance techniques and high performance strategies to help them win, not just in their sport, but most importantly, how to win at life at the next level. And today we have a special guest, Jasmine Willis. Jasmine, a 31-year-old professional boxer, an undefeated amateur fighter, and the USMTO Muay Thai champion. She proudly fights for the Las Vegas Hustle and the Team Combat Lead. Jasmine, I appreciate you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just an extreme pleasure to be able to speak with you so we can, help our community and, also help our athletes get to where they need to be.
Exactly. And so, Jasmine, you have a unique story of starting at 28, now 31. You're a pro boxer. That is insane.
I love what I do, and I'm glad boxing found me. I feel like I didn't find boxing, but how did I find boxing? It's so like you said, I'm pretty unique. I have a pretty unique upbringing. I grew up as a military brat, born to two very young parents that were stationed in the United Kingdom at the time. I spent a lot of time traveling to different places, living with my mom, and then also my little sister. I probably lived in like 8 different cities total, and I would stay in one location for about 2 to 3 years before relocating again. But despite all of our moving, Oklahoma City was like my hometown, because that's where my mom was. So living in the Bible city that is Oklahoma City, a big part of my childhood had been revolving around religious-based activities like church, Bible studies, food gatherings with the Indonesian community, because that's where my mom's side of the family is from. And sports were just like a thing to really keep me busy. I never really was the best at any sport. I played all the sports, but my introduction to combat sports, at 7 years old, I was introduced to Taekwondo. My dad is a big martial arts combat sports fan, so that was just in line with what he did. And I only did it for like 2 belts, and that's not long in Taekwondo. You can get 2 belts in like 2 months if you just
I
keep
actually had, I've experienced in Taekwondo. I think when I was in elementary, so it wasn't nothing too crazy, too serious. I think I was 12, maybe 10. My dad put me in Taekwondo, and I actually made it all the way to my first degree black belt.
Okay, snap.
And Bruce Lee was like my guy. So all five, I grew up in that era. We're similar in age. I'm 34, you're 31. So in that age, like action heroes were a thing. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so Rocky Balboa, Bruce Lee, Van Damme, like Steven Seagal, like that was the trend of these heroes. And I just looked up to all of them. I always wanted to be like every single one of them. And I think they shaped me to who I am today of just like I'm that dog mentality.
Um, so yeah, right. A lot of us did Taekwondo as a kid. I don't know. I guess it was us, like the common thing is us doing Taekwondo. But it was actually wasn't until 20 years later, when I was like 27, that I actually picked up a pair of boxing gloves because my friend invited me to a kickboxing class with her. So that's how I got introduced to boxing. I'm sorry, kickboxing. And
Kickboxing.
I'll use kickboxing and Muay Thai interchangeably. They're similar, but they're not the same.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, that was my intro to it. And then 2 years later, one day I was just sitting on the couch. I had a torn meniscus, so I was repairing. I'm sorry, I was post-op from a meniscus repair, and I was sitting on the couch, can't do anything. I'm just watching fights and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna, like, there's no point for me to just be learning these skills and not use it. Like, I want to challenge myself. Like, I want to get in the ring and, test it out. And I hadn't considered fighting for a long time at that point. I just wanted to see what it was like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
So,
from
and
exposure to interest.
yeah, and it's so weird because a lot of signs kind of pointed me to the career that I have now. And it's so weird. Like, for one, my dad is a fighter. He was a fighter. And you're gonna sound really weird, but my mom's doctor, and I was looking through old photos and stuff. My mom's doctor, when I was in her belly, her name was Dr. Knuckles. And I don't know
Oh,
if that's reach, but I'm like, I don't believe in coincidences at all. But things like that are like clues to lead us to where we actually should be.
I think that's a common trait is that we take something and if we could leverage that information to help us identify more what we're trying to go, it's fuel, right? Whatever it is, as long as I believe like, hey, my doctor was Knuckles. Yeah, that's why I fight. It had a little bit of something to do with it. He put that in me. So now it's a common theme of we'll leverage any kind of information, whether it sounds fucking crazy or not, we'll leverage it.
Right, right. Amen. I feel like the signs have always been there, but you just have to like ride the line. You have to have balance. You can't just be completely delusional. You need to be grounded here in the present also.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, from age, what, let's just say high school to age 28, when you had no fighting, what was going on in that time period?
Well, so my main sport at that time um, was high school and competitive cheerleading. I was captain of 4 teams. Like, cheerleading was my thing. And that's the thing I kind of really excelled at. And I could see that because my talent kind of separated from the rest. But and then in the off season I ran track. So that like kept me in shape, basically. But during that time, this is probably the most troubling time of my life between college and between high school and college. I am the child of two divorced parents. So as you can imagine, growing up with that, parents were yelling and arguing, and just as 20-year-olds with a kid would probably do, they don't know how to regulate their emotions. That all they do is just, you did this, you did that, and then yell at the top of their lungs, right?
Yeah,
So as a kid, you pick up those things. Even though you might not say anything, like your body feels like unsafe because people are screaming and it's like a toxic environment, you know? So that later manifested itself as I became a teenager. Of course, I was very rebellious. My dad and we were, he still is like my best friend at that time. So when they separated, I felt really alone. We're traveling the world. We're living in England. It's just me, my mom, and my little sister. My mom is working all the time. Like, all her energy is going to, working. So when you do that, the energy, the feminine energy or the love that you use to nurture your kids, like it's less of that because all your energy is going towards, you know, work and paying bills. So you're
yeah,
stressed. Um, so that manifested itself as a teen as irritability, anger, resentment at my parents because I'm moving around. I can't really establish roots anywhere. I don't have long-term friends. So that just created a negative cycle of me thinking like, what's the point? Um, like I'm mad at my parents because they're making me go through all of this, and then they suck at co-parenting. They don't talk to each other. They don't know how to communicate. I'm the one in the middle having to communicate for both of them. But so as you can imagine, as it comes with us as we're a teenager and then as we progress into adulthood. But at 13 years old, I hadn't noticed and I didn't know at the time but I remember like just not wanting to exist at all. Um, I was having panic attacks, I was having anxiety, and then I also had major depressive disorder. And at this time, this is undiagnosed, so I don't know what I'm going through. I just think like, oh my gosh, life sucks because this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. Not because like how I was programmed earlier as a child is having an effect on me now. I always told myself that having divorced parents never bothered me. And at the time as a kid, I really felt okay. But I know deep down inside that I was pushing it down. Yeah, so high school and college was a really tough time for me because I did not know how to deal with these negative emotions. I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. I didn't know how to feel safe in my body. So I spent a lot of dark days just not wanting to exist, not wanting to be here, because I didn't think anybody cared about me. I didn't think I was worth anything. Like I wasn't amazing at sports. Like I was good, but I didn't think it was gonna make me into a professional athlete, you know? Um, so yeah, that's mainly how it was for me during uh high school and college.
In college. So you had a lot of turmoil, and I don't think, and our audience are going to be, parents and coaches, and the importance of an environment. Like whether you think of it or not, what you do on the day-to-day basis, your kids are downloading those files in, whether they want to or not. And whether they believe that they can keep those files, they're still deep down inside. And some of them, that's going to be their future. And so a lot of it has to do with, our parentings, our mentors on everything you do matters, which is why we have podcasts like this to maybe one shift, one story of hearing your story that a parent is listening and being like, oh my gosh, maybe there's ways to progress. Maybe there's ways to show up better. Why? Because your babies are
Hmm.
always watching you. And it's super important to lead by example. And you don't have to be the best at what you do, but as long as you take that foot forward, your daughter, your babies, your son are going to be able to see that you're taking that step forward, right? And that can lead for a positive outcome.
Absolutely. And I don't want any parents to feel like shameful or guilty because, the way they behave and like maybe how their kids turned out. Um, but understand that we're all human. Like I learned these things from my parents, they learned it from their parents, and it's just a never-ending cycle, so there's no reason for anyone to feel like bad about themselves. It's just like what we learned. I would feel bad if like I didn't change, after being aware of all the negative things,
Yeah,
but it just is what it is, and that's how it's supposed to be, because if it wasn't, then it wouldn't. And it just like in a divine sense, like if it
yeah,
weren't supposed to happen, if we weren't supposed to break these cycles, if we weren't supposed to be this way, then we wouldn't have.
absolutely. So I'm curious, what was the switch? How did you go from bad times, why me, victim mentality, to this is for me, this happened for me?
I'd say, and okay, so it's probably more recent that it clicked for me, but I started my spiritual journey in 2020. I had graduated from Texas Tech. I had left the military. I was an Air Force reservist. I had, finished my contract and paid for school. So after that was done, I moved to LA to go live with an ex, like my college sweetheart at the time. And for 2 years, when I had first moved to Los Angeles, I was working an hourly job at as a patient coordinator, making like 20 bucks an hour in Beverly Hills. And that, like, I hated it. I was sitting in traffic for an hour every day there and back just for 7 miles. Um, so that weighed on me. Um, but eventually I've got a new job working for like one of the top three defense contractors in the world. And that, when you have a salary, it creates a sense of stability and security. So you're not focusing on basic necessities like shelter, food, transportation. And at that point, when I was able to find some security, that's when my vision was able to expand and I was able to build on that foundation of security. So a year, or maybe not even a year, this was so I got hired in July, and then it was about September. Yeah, hired in July, and in September, I'm like, I'm kind of just tired of feeling unhappy. And I realized, like, yeah, I don't have to be unhappy. It's a choice. And I also read this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Are you familiar?
Yeah, absolutely.
That book changed my life, like completely changed my life. So after I read that book, I kind of just went down into a rabbit hole of just researching all of the things that I was supposed to stay away from. So like I'm from Oklahoma City, the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
and they're super religious. So if you try to dip your finger in anything that has to do with metaphysics, like tarot or even Harry Potter, like my grandma, if you told my grandma that we were watching Harry Potter, she'd be like, oh, that's the devil. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we weren't even supposed to be watching Harry Potter. But I after I read that book, I'm like, okay, I'm just like curious what's out there. I got into astrology and eventually I found my way to the law of manifestation. And I kind of felt like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, but
Yeah.
eventually it's just like, you know what, it felt true. Like I felt like I was making myself a better person because of all of these things that were helping me understand myself. So astrology. A lot of people like don't agree with it, but just reading more into it, and understanding that we have all these different aspects to ourselves that we can learn about ourselves, it opened a whole world up, really.
Yeah. What did you
Um,
learn from it?
what, the research or astrology?
Astrology.
Astrology. So my theory is that astrology astrology is basically understanding how the planets align. So each planet has its own gravitational force. Like, how the moon has its own gravitational pull, affects the tides of the water, of the ocean and stuff. Each planet has its own gravitational pull. So if it's over here, I'm going to feel a certain way because it's pulling the water that we're made of in that direction, or it's influencing me in a certain way. So what I learned from it was that basically I'm an Aries, and that the traits that make up these different signs, it doesn't mean that you are absolutely should be these traits. These are just common manifestations of energy that you will see for people born under this time when the planets were aligned at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's giving you an awareness of who you might be. And you start putting the clues together, right? And becoming aware is always the first step of changing and improving. And so all the modalities of any type of self-assessing, which is astrology and other sources, all it does is give you some better clues about yourself that now you're aware and now you can either improve or change.
And it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is confirmation, this is the end all be all. Like you could be one way and then decide that's not who you are later on down the road. Like, okay, that helped me understand, but I understand more that that's not me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things. What am I not? Right. And
Yes,
that's all
yes.
about getting more clear. My question next is going to be, who gave you that book? How did you find a book? Are you a book reader or did this kind of just fall in your lap?
Uh, that's a good question. I think I was just researching online spiritual books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before that I was not a reader at all. But now that um but since then I have been a reader. I haven't been reading lately as much as I should be since I've been training and stuff. But um definitely helped me realize that there's so much experience out there that we could learn from books. Within a certain span of time, that person has live for 20 years and put it in a book and we can consume it in a week, so that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I see what y'all are doing, and it just helped me understand more.
So no, absolutely. I have a quote, and I love this quote. It's the level of exposure will always determine your level of success. Whatever you're exposed to, that's your cap. And what books allow you to do, and what I'm an avid book reader. I can finish a book a week. I'm serious about books, to understand the power of books. You can take someone's whole life's mission, expertise, and knowledge and condense it down into 8 hours. That's incredible. If you want to talk about being a high performer is your ability to execute at a higher level and faster than everyone else. And what better way to get the best people and experts in the world and have them be your coach one-on-one? I don't need to go and get Michael Jordan to be my coach. I go read about who taught Michael Jordan to be his coach and get those lessons. Those are my mentors. They don't have to be physical people or people who are alive. And that's one of the key things I tell my athletes. And that's one of the habits in my program is we read. Why? Your level of exposure. If you want to be the best, what's the fastest way to become the best? They'll all say one thing: work hard. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what that means. What is working? Like, there is nothing attached to working hard. No, go find the best to ever do it. Copy what they did. Boom. Light years ahead in an instant. That's what books can do. You talk about the power of now, right? Is that the book you read?
Yeah, by Eckhart Tolle.
There's one specific book that changed. I'm a natural introvert. And we had this little conversation before the podcast. So are you. And a lot of people might be confused about, oh, you're not an introvert, Jay. You know how to turn it on. And it wasn't until I read one book that changed almost everything for me. And it was, your personality is not permanent. They're skills. You might be naturally one way, but if you look at everything you do as a skill, then you can now change your entire world. Your person at being confident is a skill. Public speaking, you may suck at it, cool, but yeah, it's a skill. Being organized, yeah, you may not be an organized person, it may not be your thing, but it's a skill. Like, everything can be a skill if you just apply it to, like, boxing. If you look at it like boxing and you look at it, the thing you don't like to do is a skill, then all you have to do is, I just have to put time into it. Eventually, over time, get better at doing it. And eventually that becomes I'm good at it. And so that right there was just game changer. Your personality is not permanent. You can be that outgoing person. You just have to put some hours in.
Right. I think a lot of us like to identify with whatever we feel on the inside also. That's why I think I was so depressed, is because I was I claim that I was sad. I'm taking on these emotions and I'm holding it in, instead of just thinking like I'm experiencing it and not identifying it as part of my personality. I feel like it would have been different. And that's what the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle taught me, was that we have an emotional body and then we have like a physical body. And so that created that space between the negative emotions that I was feeling and who I truly was.
Exactly. So self-awareness, I love it. I want to talk about how you use this self-awareness techniques that you use and put it into boxing. How did you become an amateur boxer or a fighter and like completely shift into a high performance, driven, ambitious person to pursue this goal, becoming pro? How did that all transpire?
How did it all transpire? And like, again, I was just super tired of my own BS. Really, I had to realize, like, I'm the common denominator in everything that's going wrong. And maybe it was like, maybe videos or something that popped up on my timeline, but um I also read into what's a good book? Not a book. I probably just information online. When you're
Mhm.
like at home just consuming so much
Yeah.
that you kind of lose track of where it comes from. But oh, my mind just went blank.
I'm terrible at, like, listen, I can't quote anybody. I can't quote actors' names. We're both mutual friends from Matthew. Matthew can tell you the actors' names. I could just tell you the actor name in the movie. Like, I'm never about the detail stuff. I grab what I can grab and I escape.
Right, right. Like, And then it comes out as something that I said. And I'm like, no, I should
I
credit
heard
it.
it somewhere.
Yeah, I heard it somewhere, the internet, you know.
Something that made me feel a whole lot better. I had this conversation with my wife because I don't credit no one because my mind doesn't grab that. So I heard a different quote that says the truth can never be owned. All right. Somebody, they got that from somebody that translated to somebody that translated to somebody. So the truth can never be owned. And I was like, I'll take it because I want to take it because I suffer from not knowing somebody's quote or name. And so I was like, I like that. Truth can't be owned. It's true.
Yeah, so basically, I did this because I learned the process of alchemy. And alchemy is just the process of transforming one thing into another. And in this case, it's loneliness, grief, sadness, um, anger, you know. And I noticed every time I noticed my best performances had been in the times where I was like in a dark hole or grieving, you know, and that actually brings me to when I won my first tournament. Can we go into that or?
Absolutely. Let's go. You move the direction you want to move in.
Okay, so it is August of 2022. This is my debut competition as a fighter, as an amateur fighter. And at the time, my grandmother was in hospice. When I went to this tournament, my grandmother was in hospice. My dog had cancer. And then I also had these mental things going on like depression, anxiety, and panic attacks still because I was undiagnosed. So I'm going through all of that, but at this time I'm a you know, I'm like the raw kind of healed version of me. Like at that point I've done a lot of work mentally to try to emotionally heal myself so that I could become just a better person all around, um not even in like my sport. I just wanted to be like the best version of me because I had felt so worthless. But so the day we have to weigh in to check in for the tournament, and this tournament is in Arizona, we get a phone call from my we get a FaceTime phone call from the hospice center, and they show me my grandmother, and she looked completely different. Like I was in shambles. She looked completely different, and at that point she had been unresponsive, and this is right before I had to weigh in and compete for my very first tournament, you know. So and in that case I knew like I got to do this for my grandmother, and that's what I told her. Like, you know, I love you, but I'm about to win this tournament for you. And it sounds so cliche now that I say it, but it's real. It is so real. You think like it's something out of a movie, but that was probably like the top 10. Well, winning the tournament has been the top 10 experiences of my life. And it was that grief that helped me get there. You know, you have everything has an equal opposite. So on the other side of grief would be love.
Yeah.
um, you know, the capacity to grieve is directly proportional to your capacity to love, you know? Um, so that in itself, you know, it helped me a lot because I was able to really dig deep in that tournament, and it pulled out a side of me that I did not know even existed. And I get emotional thinking about it because, you know, you never when you have years of just putting yourself down and stuff like this happens, it feels surreal. It feels like a dream,
Yeah.
really. Hmm.
So one thing high performers have in common is they call it the dark side. Every high performer leverages that dark feeling. And some of them, it comes from grief, it comes from extreme pain, and they can use it as I call it rocket fuel. Because what that does, it will unlock something inside of you that will and drive your performance insane amounts. And there's two levers you can pull, and what I kind of tell my athletes. And the most common one is the dark side. If you read about it from all high performers, they all can use it, or some high performers can actually fake. They can fake an imaginary situation
Mhm.
to make themselves tap into the dark side. So, example, on the Last Dance with Michael Jordan, because nothing was really happening at that time that for him to pull the lever of pain, he would fake the situation where they were talking shit about him, and it would fuel him, and it would use this intensity because he knew what it could do. When you know how to pull the lever of the dark side, we know what it can do. Now, some athletes never go through any kind of grief, or so it becomes very difficult to pull that lever. So the next lever they can pull is the lever of pleasure, the reward, the future, the dream that also can drive you to do some things. But most commonly, the more heavily pushed is the dark side. And once you know how to tap into that on a consistent basis, you become a fucking monster.
Absolutely. It's like the dark side is more powerful, is more powerful energy to, I guess, create the goal or achieve the goal that you want. Well, for me personally, I can't talk for no one else, but I
No, it's all good.
yeah, I agree. I completely agree. My fight name is the one and only, and that is like an alter ego for me. When I step into the ring, I don't care who it is. Like, I'm trying to kill you. Really. Like, I have to go that deep and dark because that's how scared I am. Really.
Yeah.
Like, I have to finish this or myself or my brain is gonna talk me out of it. Like, I just have to go all in. But like I said earlier, everything takes balance, as a fairly new competitor, because I've only been competing since 2022. So it's 2024. So I'm going on two years. I'm learning to control that in the ring. I'm learning to control that anxiety and that adrenaline in there, and that like bloodthirst. And because
Yeah.
actually my last performance in Team Combat League, it's just one round for each of your fighters at each weight class. And then if you win that round, then the person who wins gets a 10-9 or 10-8 or 10-7, depending on if they get knocked down or knocked out. My last performance, I was going in there like, yeah, I'm gonna do what I did before. I know I hit hard, I got speed, and I got power. I'm a presser. I'm going to press her, and like, because that's what had worked for me my very first performance. And I had like an amazing performance. I got fighter of the night, my very first pro debut competition. So I was like, okay, that worked. Let me go ahead and do it again. And so I let the dog out for my last performance, and I almost get dropped. I get tapped on the chin, bloop, and then like the lights went out a little bit. My legs buckled, but I go back up, and I remember going like this because she's coming at me, like she's trying to get me out of there. She's going like this.
She tasted blood. Yeah.
Yeah, she tasted blood. So I'm like, I need to be smarter. Don't just go out and be a killer. I need to be smarter, and I need to box. So that's really what I'm working on now, is just controlling and having balance, controlling that fire and that flame that, just runs through everything, and just it's like a fire, it just
Yeah.
control the fire.
So that's one of the things I teach as a mental performance coach is how to control your emotions, because it can happen. Every athlete deals with it, whether you're a pro fighter or you play volleyball, it doesn't matter. Your thoughts are going to be flooded. All right. And when you're going to get hit with adversity, and you're going to perform at your worst in two different states. One, when you're thinking about the past, right? You're playing defense. You're thinking about the past, you got dropped. If that's all in your head to not get dropped again, you're no longer in your present. When you're not in your present, you can't perform at your best. Vice versa, you can also be in this other state. Now, after you got dropped, now you're thinking about, man, how do I not get dropped again? So once again, you're already having anxiety of all the what ifs. What if I get dropped again? What if she hits me here again? How? And so whenever your thoughts are either in the past or the future, you can't operate at your best as an athlete. And so the best athletes to ever do it in the game is their ability to control their emotions, which I call emotional IQ, or EQ, emotional intelligence, which is AKA mental toughness, the ability to control your emotions, to remain in a present state. Because when you're present, you now can think about what's happening right here, right now, right? And you can't do that in the future, and you can't do that in the past. And that's when the game speeds up on you. That's when everything speeds and it's chaotic and you don't know what's happening. You can't think anymore. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, intensity goes up. Tap into the fight or flight is okay, cool. Now there's strategies, reflect and refocus, reframe. How do I get set? Right. So I don't know if you know this strategy, but maybe you do. How do you, let me ask you, how do you try to reset after getting dropped? Do you have a process to reset?
I just don't quit. Like, it doesn't matter if you suck, if you're doing terrible at it, just do not quit. That's just like the only thing that I could do is just keep fighting, and then God meets me the rest of the way. So
Oh man.
when I, so going back, boom, 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 going back to my first debut tournament and when I won and became a national champion as an amateur, um, my second fight in the tournament, I was so exhausted. I gassed out in the second round and I was throwing punches at that girl like a drunk dude in a bar, like
Yeah.
sloppy, just throwing them like that. And that was some serious adversity because I'm running on fumes. So by the third round, like I have nothing left. But so basically I was winning that round. I was hitting her with some hard shots. But that girl is so durable. Shout out to her. She's a sweetheart. Oh my gosh, that girl is so durable and she just would not drop. So she's pressing me, and eventually I end up on the ropes because I don't have any energy to move away and to defend, right? So we go into the clinch, for your audience who doesn't know. Basically I wrap her up like this, and this is a Muay Thai tournament, so I could do this. And I hit this move that I had only practiced one time months before. And that's how I know it was God. So I'm in trouble. I'm gassed out. I have nothing else to give, but I don't know. Something came through me. And at this point, you're not, when you're relaxed, you don't really overthink. You're like, your body is like the loudest one in the room, not your mind, because your body is exhausted. But I hit this move. I'm on the ropes. I hit this move, turn around and basically hip toss her. And she's on the canvas. I don't know where that energy came from, but I know that it was God like giving me that strength because my eyes were closed. Like I only practiced that move once. So from that, it taught me to just go ahead and pursue no matter how scary it is. And then God will meet you the rest of the way.
God has a plan for everything. Even if you would have lost, it would have been. And I think some of the most common themes, as well as all high performers, all pro athletes, they have a higher power that they believe in. That no matter what, like this is the plan, right? And trust in that plan. I'll keep working it, and that just gives them a sense of not quitting because they know that plan is there for them, right? And you have that in you, and since you have that in you, now it's your responsibility to operate forward because it's bigger than you.
Absolutely. It's more than just a sport. It's about, what can we do for each other? Like we're not here for ourselves. Um, but yeah, and you don't have to think that you're alone. No, everybody has religious differences, but all of the people, like you said, a lot of us are very spiritual because without it, how I don't under like for me it would be impossible. Like there's so much suffering, there's so much nastiness in this world. Of course you're gonna be depressed if you don't, look for help. If you think you're
Yeah.
alone, like I don't know how you survive or how you swim, you drown if you have someone to talk to or guide you, you're
Yeah.
lost.
Speaking of guidance, how important is it to have a team, coaches, mentors, fighters next to you? How important is that for you as a fighter to help you keep pushing forward?
So boxing is a very lonely sport, but you have stable mates. And I love that. And with TCL, I love this also because it's a team concept. It's kind of similar to um like an Olympic team. Not at that level, it's a professional level, but you have people who qualify for the Olympics and then they go and compete together. And y'all are all working towards the same goal. So even if I wasn't involved in TCO, I'm still at the gym training with people who are also suffering like I am. So I know like, and also they're suffering and they're having, you know, great outcomes, world champions and stuff. So I know that this all isn't in vain. Like this is all for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things I want to point out is how effective of having like-minded people around you. How important is that versus if you didn't have them, do you think you would continue? Do you think your performance would continue to progress if you just did this alone versus having a team and a unit? Would the environment affect you at all?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. And you could see that in my, and not just as humble as possible, you could see that in my progression and my skills and my development. I trained with world-class coaches, and that's another thing that told me that I was in the right place is because I magically ended up in the right position. I've never had to look for another coach or anything, but my coaches allowed me to train with their fight team. Um, and I was able to get to the level I am so quickly because I'm training like a professional already. That my training regimen has not changed at all going from amateur to pro. So, yeah.
My question is, and when you were training solo and you were a fighter without a team, when you got with this high level team, what were the key differences from what you were doing versus what this high level team is doing? What did you notice and what did you have to adapt to? Like, oh shit, this is what they do?
The organization for sure. And the fact that my coach has been, you know, he has a lot of experience, but I've worked with other coaches before, but this one is just different because they had that dog in them. You know, the other coaches I've worked with, they're good and they push you, but sometimes I've noticed like it's a little too friendly, you know? Like there's too much laughing going on. I'm not tired. Like that was a sign for me that told me like, mm, I don't think I'm really, you know, this is cool. I'm training, I'm learning a lot, but something doesn't feel right. So when I came out here to Vegas and started training with my team now, like my coaches were cussing at us, you know, like I don't want none of that weak shit, you know? So
Yeah.
I knew at that moment, like, okay, this is what I need. Like I knew, like you could see the progress in their fighters just at the level that they're at. So I was in the right
So
place.
they just demanded more excellence, more pressure.
Yeah, yeah, and we're on a training schedule also. So Monday through Saturday, we have a routine. Mondays we do drilling, partner drilling. Tuesday we have sparring. Wednesday we have like a really long hard workout and so on. So a plan. We had a plan. I would say that was my difference. Was organization and a plan.
So when I talk to athletes and they tell me their goals, right? And they're like, yeah, I want to go pro, I want to go be a starter, I want to put on this amount of weight or muscle. I'm like, okay, what was your plan? And the craziest thing to me was the same word always comes out, I'll work hard. And for you to just say that you really didn't have a plan until you got with them, it blows my mind. When you have a goal and there's no plan, what are y'all even like? What? It does not make sense in my head. Like it's like being on a boat and there's no captain. You're going to be just sailing all over the place. No wonder you can't accomplish. No wonder you're frustrated. There is no plan. You can't dissect anything. You can't track your measurements. You don't, bro. What are we doing? And so for you to hear that is athletes, you got to have a plan, and the plan is not the standard work. So my next question to you is, yeah, you have your plan. They programmed it for you. You show up, you execute, you do your job. What do you do outside that plan to help you perform at your best?
I do a lot of you know, the emotional work never stops. The healing never stops. You're always going to be healing or, you know, trying to better yourself. And I feel like the only time we are whole and at peace is when we are dead. That's the only time. So I had to get comfortable here. Um, but I'm sorry, route me back to the question.
Yeah, no, so I have a thing. What I've noticed from researching and studying and being obsessed with just success and winning, that winning will always require you to do the work that everyone else does, but also it's also going to require you to do the unrequired work. I call it the extra work that nobody's willing to do. It's the detail work. It's the work that coach ain't telling you to do. It's the stuff that you have to do because you know you need to be doing it on your own, which is the separation. I call it the art of separation. Everybody shows up to boxing. Everybody shows up for the cardio. Everybody shows up for their rounds, for their sparring. But what do you show up for yourself? What do you do to show up for yourself to give you the separation because nobody else is doing it?
Visualization. I feel like people don't realize the power that they have with their mind. My routine or my ritual before a fight, um, I like to journal. I have a journal specifically for manifesting. Like I've blessed it, and even the pen, I only write it if when I'm trying to write the script to my life. And I feel like that is an extremely powerful tool, even outside of sports, just to creating the life that you want. So I'll go and I'll write how I want the situation to go, and I'll visualize it. I'll feel it. I'll feel every aspect. I'll feel the canvas. I'll feel the uniform that I'm wearing. I'll feel how I'm going to feel afterwards. And I feel like that really separates me because I've written things in my, okay, for the USMTO tournament, my debut is crazy. I said I was going to knock this girl out first round. I didn't knock her out, but I got a TKO. Like the ref waved it off.
Yeah.
And I feel like people don't use that. Like we have help. We have help. We're so powerful. And you just gotta, do it and try it for yourself. And then when you do and you see that it works, like you're set. I feel like you cracked the code.
You won't find an elite athlete who doesn't, we call it in the high performance world, mental imagery. Everything happens twice for elite athletes, first in their head and then in the world.
Right.
Everything happens twice. We visualize it, and now we have the game plan. We feel it, and the more you start working on mental imagery, and it's a skill. Like I said, once I can get your mind to understand that everything's a skill, because you're gonna suck at it first. I'm like, ah, what am I doing? Da, da, da. All right. But every time you actually put a routine in place that this is what we're doing on the day-to-day practice, we visualize it. And the deeper it becomes, the more it becomes real. You could feel it. You can see yourself and feel yourself get hit and what you're going to do and how you're going to react to that when that happens. You can become powerful. You can control the whole arena.
Right, right. And it's not and I don't want your audience to think like, oh, let me go grab a journal and like my life is just gonna magically, you know, happen for me. Like you are a co-creator, meaning there's two, the divine and then yourself. So if something doesn't happen that I had wrote down, I just say, okay, that's obviously wasn't a part of the divine plan. So I
Yeah.
just agree, iffy there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I mean, everyone has to find their story and everybody has to find what works, right? And so that's part of your journey is being on that fine line and fine tuning. But that's so detailed and that's what makes you an athlete, an elite athlete. It's that you care about this little thing right here. And that's what most people don't care about. And that's what I call the art of separation. The fact that you care about this little thing and how you move it is what makes you an elite person because most people won't give it the time of the day.
Right. I
Do
agree.
you have any set of quotes that you kind of live by or kind of like impacted you or shifted you?
Yes, I saw this on a tweet actually by the great Nipsey Hussle. He's a rapper.
Yeah.
And he said, to love something is to suffer for it. And I love that. And I don't think that applies to romantic relationships. I don't want people to put themselves in toxic relationships, but I do apply it. I applied it to this sport and it helped me understand like, oh, I love this. It doesn't feel like work. I'm training 6 days a week, sometimes in camp 2 a days. I love this. I'm suffering and I love it. And I really love that quote.
Have you always loved the process or was it something that you grew to love?
The process of becoming a professional boxer.
Yeah, just actual the habits and the discipline it takes to become a boxer, the working out, the sparring, the pushing yourself to your limits, that
Mhm.
process. Is that something that you always loved or is it something you grew to love?
It's something I definitely grew to love because as an athlete in high school, I wasn't pushing myself like this. This is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like I would say I grew to love it. Because when I first started, I guess when I first started, I said I loved it and that's why I kept going. But I wasn't competing at that time. But when I first dang it, when I first started training, uh oh my gosh. I just went blank. Oh my goodness. I don't know why my brain's just like has a
Oh, it's practice, right? We talked about like this is for people listening. This is Jasmine's first podcast. This is Jasmine's first time putting herself out there.
you
And
get it
so
right.
we got to remember, like, this is me, this is new to me interviewing somebody that I've actually never met before. All my other past interviewees, I've had some kind of relationship with them. And so, Jasmine, I was just as nervous to jump on this podcast as you. But you know what I like about nervousness? It means we care. So it's
Mm,
always reframing and pushing it into a positive direction. And I was getting some a little bit of anxiety. I was like, oh man, I'm tense. And I'm like, what if I started going to the future and brought myself back to the present? I was like, hey, you know what? Hey, whatever happens, God's plan. If I mess up some words, which I'm known to do, I'll jack some words up. I'm like, hey, it is what it is. We're gonna keep pushing, right? And so, Jasmine, if you need some water, if you need to take a deep breath or anything like that, absolutely, right? This is being uncomfortable and doing what success is. It's being uncomfortable and being in that and learning how to love it.
right, right. Everyone is witnessing this journey for both of us, like we're practicing, really is what it seems like. Everything is a practice.
Everything's a practice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a shirt like that. Everything's a practice.
Yeah, everything you just got to do the reps and practice just like boxing.
Then if you have that mindset, everything's a practice, then you're okay with sucking. And
Hmm.
that's why people don't start. Is well, I'll never do that because I suck at it. Well, you're going to suck. That's part of the process. If you do enough time in it, eventually you'll be good. So because you think you suck at it, well, you suck at everything if you never start. So that means you'll never start at anything. So
Right.
I'm just embrace the suck of podcasting. And I always tell myself, here's a little lever. I love pain. I know how to pull the lever of pain. I hold a high standard in what I do. And I tell myself, now it's contradictory to what people believe because people should not do this if they don't have the techniques to actually learn how to leverage it. But I tell myself I suck because I don't like the feeling of sucking. And so, you know what that does? I
Hmm.
don't want to feel that pain anymore. I'll go practice some more.
Mm.
So now I leverage the feeling of sucking. I don't want to feel that no more. Okay, cool. Well, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to go get some practice in. So that's what I kind of teach my athletes. I was like, hey, let's face the accountability. Here's what you do in my program. Here are your numbers and your KPI. Here are your stats of how much you're adhering to our program. How does that make you feel? Like shit. Okay, good. Don't feel this way no more. Go do what you want to do. Right. And so that gives them the power of like, oh, wait, I don't have to feel this way. I was like, no, go
Yeah,
do some more. Go suck some more.
exactly. And you just got to keep doing it until you get it right. But
That's
going
all
back
good.
to your question, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. My brain went blank for a second. Did I love it when I first started? I did say I love it. But what made me love it was that it allowed me to just not think about anything for just an hour because outside of that, my brain is just going and going and going. I don't like my job. It's amazing on paper. Um, I don't like going out. I don't like living in LA. Like, what is just always on edge, like wanting something more. I can't sleep at night. So when I was invited to this kickboxing class, it was like, I could just focus. I could just do what I'm doing because if I focus on anything else, I'm gonna get hit. So
Yeah,
it forced me to be in the present moment. And
exactly.
it was hard, but it became my therapy and I learned to love it. I learned how to suffer without quitting in that process
Yes.
of in that process of beginning to training all the way up to now.
So I started stalking your Instagram and I noticed a theme that's very common from elite performers. And they all use some type of chip on their shoulder. and something they use to kind of drive them forward, whether they know they do it or not. But this chip is found in Michael Jordan's story. He didn't make the high school basketball team. Tom Brady's story, he was the last draft pick in the NFL and continued to be the last in almost everything. And so they put this chip on their shoulder to prove people wrong. And they don't always use it as their main driver, but it's something that they can use to leverage to keep pushing, whether it's prove them wrong or not. I think you'll hear nowadays this, oh, don't do it to prove people wrong. But once again, they're so unaware of the power of that you can. I talk about leverage because you don't ever just want to hold on to one thing. You want to leverage what you can leverage and throw away what you cannot. And I've noticed on your Instagram that you have this little chip on your shoulder of you don't look like a boxer. And you have this feminine side of you that I feel you use to your advantage to make you go harder because you're picturing in your head, well, you think I don't know how to box. You think that I'm not aggressive. I don't have a dog because of this picture you see me. And I love it that you think that. So I'm going to leverage it. Is that something that is you like to pull that chip? Is that something you hold?
Absolutely. Like I enjoy being feminine. I enjoy the makeup and the lashes and the heels and stuff. But on the inside, I'm kind of a tomboy. Um, I'm still like a lady at the end of the day. It's just, I feel like my art of choice is just the art of war, you know? And
I love that.
yeah, I'm used to being in a male-dominated field, like working in the military. I was in a manual labor job. Like I was working on the flight line, driving forklifts and stuff. So, it's not surprising for anybody to hear that, I was judged for being a woman in the military. But my mom, growing up with a single mother as the my main breadwinner in the military, she was my example of what a woman should be. You know, I got my hardworking, skills from her because I saw like she was working and she just like stood on business in all aspects. So I feel like that shows a little bit, or it shows a lot, that's that chip on my shoulder because I've seen it happen, and the people that judge me, they haven't seen it happen.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, the chip on my shoulder, yes, that motivates me. Um, it motivates me, but it doesn't keep me going long term because, I nobody is responsible for our emotions and how we feel. So, I don't give anybody that power. Yeah, I don't give anybody that power because our emotions come from our bodies. It's just our perception that makes it seem like they're making me feel that way. So that chip on my shoulder is actually coming from me. And I had to understand how to take that power away out of other people's hands. And so overall, I'm just set out to prove it to myself that I'm a fighter in all aspects of life, not just in the ring. Um, and it leads me to a sense of like confirmation for me that I'm truly powerful at creating the life that I want. And it's always been me versus me. It's never been me versus anybody else. It's just been me in the way that I'm thinking. So that chip on my shoulder, I'm not going to give it to anybody else because then that means I'm giving you that power. I'm giving it back to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think that's a common misconception. When people say I have a chip on my shoulder, you'll hear, I call it the chat, right? You hear all the comments of like, oh, that is a terrible way of thinking. You should have the power in the agency. It's like, no, yeah, you should have the power in the agency. You are here because of you, but a high performance strategy is we could tap into. That's why I say leverage. We don't use this external thing. We don't do this because of, we can just tap into it. That's why it's leverage. They're just little buttons, and it's art. You said art of war. The art of war is beautiful. It's so detailed. It's so instrumental that we pull it. We could press all these little buttons to bring us and use us. If we're getting too high, we tap this button here to bring us down. If we're getting too low, we could tap that button. If we feel depressed and sad, we tap into our purpose. right? And it's knowing how to play your instrument, which is yourself, which
Mhm.
is why I love the art of separation, the art of this war. And most people don't understand it. And so that's why you hear these things of you're doing it wrong. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Well, they don't know all the little buttons that you pull on the levers, and it's beautiful. Like I am so seduced from it. And so I wish just more people like this podcast would understand um I want to eat your face is a part of a little button that I want to press to tap into some anger. And then also at the end, when it's all said and done, I love you. You're a friend. Thank you for a great fight. And I've
Mhm.
noticed when I tapped into some of your videos that you're very respectful. Even on the day before the fight, you were very respectful. But also, yeah, when you're in the ring, like you're a monster. Like you could tap into that, and it's just playing this beautiful musical, emotional roller coaster. And I think that's key because you play too high, you're gonna get crushed, and you just learned that lesson.
Mhm.
And you play too low, you're definitely gonna get crushed. It's fine tuning it. And I think if anybody could take anything away from the podcast, it's from Jasmine's so much focus on your mental performance and learning how to control oneself because that's what the mental game is. And the mental game is usually preference in baseball is the mental game. But without the mental game, you have no control over yourself, which means you have no control over your performance, and therefore you're not going to be a great athlete.
I agree.
Now, last question here. If you can go back to your younger self, 17 in the high school age, what would you tell her now that can make a big impact on her for the future?
And I really love this question. I think about it often, even, prior to you asking me this question. Um, but I would tell her to hold on, just to hold on and just take it day by day or even moment by moment. You don't need to think about, what you're going to do, where you're going to be in a year and, 5 weeks or whatever. Just be present in the moment because all we have is now. Like time does not exist. Time is a man-made construct.
It
Tomorrow never
is.
comes. Yesterday isn't a thing. All we have is now, the present moment. Like, if that makes sense. Tomorrow never comes.
Yeah.
So
Be where your feet are.
yeah, exactly. So I would also tell her everything that I'm going, all the darkness that I'm going is not in vain. Like there's an equal opposite to it. My capacity to feel those things have led me to my dream life, my dream job. I have amazing relationships with my family now, with my mother included. Like I get chills. Like oh my gosh, I love it. I have great relationships with my friends. I'm attracting basically my soul tribe, the people that I can align with. Like it's not a coincidence that me and you have a lot of common thinking and that I'm on your podcast right now. You start to realize like your environment is a reflection of your work and also your mental.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And, one thing I like to tell my athletes is I want you to picture yourself in your dream life, right? You have it all. What would that person have to go through to get that?
Mhm.
And it would be hard times, it would be pain, it would be suffering, and it would be an immense amount of dedication and obedience on the path to greatness. And if you feel like you're in that season, then you are right where you should be because the journey is what creates you. I think Inky Johnson, you ever heard of Inky Johnson?
I haven't.
Okay, so he's a high performance coach, a motivational speaker, and he says it's not about the outcome; it's about what you become in the process of the outcome.
Sorry. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. Did you hear that quote from Inky Johnson?
Uh, I didn't. I just got the phone call when you were saying it.
Oh, okay, cool. So the quote, and I love this because it keeps me in the process and in the pain, and it allows me to keep pushing because the quote says, "It's not about the outcome." It's about what you become in the process to get the outcome. That's the real gift. It's about who you becoming is the gift. The outcome is the outcome. We have no control over that. But what we have control over is who we become in the process of the outcome. And that becomes Kobe Bryant over here says it the best. It's like the dream becomes the journey. The dream is the journey. It's about all the shit that you had to go through. That is the dream. It wasn't about the championships.
Right? Never. It's
So
we are now. It's never about the outcome at all. And you'll feel more, it's more satisfying when you do go through all the
yeah.
all suffering and stuff, like you don't, if it was just easy, like it would be like, okay, it wouldn't mean anything to you.
I put everything in an intense version. I don't know. It just feels like it'll help athletes attach to it a little bit more because they're all like, they might feel it more powerful. And what I tell them is, if it hurts and it deeply pains you and you overcome it, that's the feeling, what makes it so great. Because like you said, if it was easy, you wouldn't get no value of it. So the fact that it's very painful to overcome is what makes it worth it when you overcome it.
Right.
So that is like always a key indicator. If I'm in an immense amount of struggle and immense amount of pain, then that is exactly what I need to be. Because when I overcome it, that's the feeling that I get from it. Because if it was easy, then it wouldn't taste the same. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't enjoy it. The hunt needs to be, see my facial expressions, like the hunt needs to be hard. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Predator.
Yeah.
It's okay. Well, one of the newer ones where it's a girl who is, yeah, you seen that one
Yeah.
where the predator, and I've never seen this before. The predator looks at an opponent who is weak and it doesn't attack it.
Hmm.
And I just start chewing on it. It only attacks the opponents who are worth the fight, the challenge. And I was all like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, no, I don't want to, I don't want that challenge. It's not a challenge. I want that challenge. I want the fight because that's what makes it worth it. And anyways, I get so crazy
I
over this stuff.
I agree also. And another thing I want to add to that is that it creates a sense of confidence in yourself that for me, I never, I struggled with confidence, but now I'm, more accepting of myself because I know I could fight and I know I can almost get dropped and still keep going. And when,
Yeah,
you know, so doing that work, sitting with um the bad emotions and stuff, it creates a sense of confidence.
absolutely. You achieved it. And then that confidence leads to other shit. Confidence drives performance, and performance comes from your preparation. And so, Jasmine, it looks like you're doing a lot of mental performance work, and that is going to continue to be the separator, Jasmine. And I want you to keep pursuing down this path because nobody's willing to do this stuff. Everybody can do the boxing, everybody can show up for the cardio, everybody can, focus on their nutrition, but who's going to show up for themselves when no one's watching? And that's doing the internal work.
Yeah, it's the mind first. We're just our mind.
The
Everything else,
mind controls everything.
yeah, it's that's where we come from. Everything else is just like it comes from our brain because it's all translation of electrical signals. So I agree, everything's in mind.
Absolutely. Well, Jasmine, I appreciate you so much. If you made it this far in the podcast, we appreciate you. We can learn a lot from Jasmine from being at age 28, from not fighting to now is a pro fighter. And obviously, it comes down to the mental game, which I believe that has got her there in such a quick space, so late in the game. I think, is that considered late in the game, 28, to be kind of trying to be
Oh,
a fighter?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it is considered as late in the game, but
It
hey,
hasn't stopped you. It's
yeah,
mindset for that just proves your ability to perform at a high level because of your mindset. You didn't let that mental blocker because some of these people have been fighting since they were 3, 4, 5, right? It's built in their blood.
yep,
And
I agree.
that right there is a story to tell to give people hope that it doesn't matter where you are in your journey. You could flip that switch and everything can change, but it won't happen until you start training your mental game and start learning oneself.
Absolutely, I
All right,
agree.
guys. Well, stay tuned to the next podcast. And if you have athletes that want to be coached for the mental performance and high performance techniques, visit my website, elitemindathlete.com, and let's get some elite coaching, some elite habits, some elite accountability, and let's make them feel the pain of that they're not really working that hard. And let's expose them and let's teach them how to lever pain to their advantage because at the end of the day, we can't hide from pain. All right, we can only learn to leverage it so that way we can keep pushing forward because life's going to hit you harder than anything in the world. So let's
Yeah,
just learn how to deal with it now before they get out there by themselves. So peace and love.